Okay. Again, if you have questions down the road, please don't hesitate to ask. All right. So I'm going to go into a bit of like tutorial stuff. So actually, before I go into that, I just want to touch base with you guys, see how you feel about the games that you're working on. You know, are you... Oh, it's no problem. But, you know, just the amount of work that you have to do, or, you know, if you think that, you know, I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable with, you know, how things are going, or if you need, you know, any clarification on anything, or I don't know. want to make sure everyone's, you know, doing okay, pretty much. If there's any concerns, please let me know. Sure, absolutely, you can email me. Yep. So again, I really liked what I saw in the game design documents. I think you guys have some really good ideas. A lot of platforming stuff, which is okay, because it seems like everybody had unique ideas on it. So we will talk about platforming. I'm gonna do some 3D stuff today. I know some of you also have 3D platforming too, but that's easier to set up, I think, just because Unity was built for 3D first, and then they threw in a 2D package later. So probably one of the upcoming classes, probably next week, I would imagine. I'm going to go into how to set up 2D stuff and get into that a bit. Today, again, I'm going to go into some like smaller tutorial things. Kind of first-person stuff. I feel like you guys could use that. I'm going to try to get into loading different scenes. So basically going from one level to the next. Going to touch a little bit on camera movement again and how that works. And I will see where we go from there. So, and again, if there's something you guys want me to touch on, please let me know. So, all right, we'll just go ahead and get right in. Okay, so y'all should be able to see Unity right now. Hopefully I did that right. Get the ball rolling. Feeling kind of roll. That's okay. Yeah, no problem. One of the things I kind of went back and forth on is giving you guys like kind of a template for scheduling, but I felt like I was kind of micromanaging you guys too much. So I'm gonna leave scheduling up to you, like how to, you know, what things to work on and what, you know, order. I try to suggest things in my notes for your papers, just to say, hey, you can probably want to focus on this a bit more than, you know, something else. So I kind of try to guide you in the right direction that way. But yeah, for the most part, I know everyone's schedules are different, so I didn't want to like, set anything in stone. So I believe we have about 5 weeks left in the semester, if I'm correct. And I think, let me just pull up the rest of this calendar here. So yeah, there's 5 classes left, probably by week 10. I'm gonna switch it up and have kind of an assessment of what you guys have been up to, just to check in. I mean, it's it's going to be for participation points, pretty much. But I just want to see where you guys are at, what problems you've had, you know, what things you like, what you don't like, that kind of stuff. I'll put it on the calendar and Sakai as well. But so, all right, back to this. So I have this little scene here. It's similar to what we were working with last week. I use a plane instead of a cube. I think it's just better to use that. I have ground, I have a player object, and then we have a camera. If you notice in the left, typically we have the main camera like outside. A good way to do like a first person perspective is to child the player camera to the player. A good way to do this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and delete it. So you have the player here, you just right click, camera. Okay. And I like to rename it player camera. Okay, so now we have a camera attached to the player. The thing to do is to raise it up so that, you know, you have the perspective of first person. Okay. Pretty much that's all it takes for that type of perspective. Because when you run it, yeah, you'll see that the camera is snapped to whatever your player's position is. Okay, let me actually run that again. So like I said, in the last tutorial, we have him moving around like this, right? But that's like kind of tough to maneuver around, you know, going left, right, up, and down. So one other thing that we can work on is using the mouse. Can you do third person or top down? Yeah, we can definitely get into that. Top down is pretty easy because that's just a kind of a fixed camera, right? And honestly, I believe, let me just try this out. Yeah, there's your third person. So yeah, basically, essentially, you just back the camera up behind the player, and it's snapped due to being a child of the player. So it'll follow it wherever you want. You can add functionality so that you know camera shakes or moves around depending on if around a corner and stuff like that. That takes a little bit more effort. So I'm gonna bring this back in. Oh geez, just gonna do this. Okay. So one thing I want to work on is changing like a head tilt, so moving your head position with your mouse, right? Like a typical like shooting game. So I had this script here called player controller. Just open it up, and we're just going to run through it. So first we have some variables up here. Float, mouse sensitivity, as you can imagine, that's to control the mouse sensitivity of when you move your mouse. And the player, basically what you want to transform. So in this update, one thing we have to do is change the state of the cursor to locked rather than moving it around, because that'll affect how your rotation occurs, right? And then we call this function rotate camera. So that's pretty much it in the update. It's pretty simple there. And then we can go into rotate camera. So we have two floats here for X and Y, which essentially get in this input that get axis, mouse X and mouse Y. Now, it knows how to get these two inputs in Unity. If you go to your input manager, which is an edit, project settings, and your input manager, you'll have two here, mouse X and mouse Y. And then they're aptly named mouse X and mouse Y. So those are the ones that it would be looking for. Again, if you wanted other things, you can call it, if you had a shooting script, we'll have, fire 1, that's what you would be calling for an input pretty much. So you can also like have your code look for this jump instead of looking for a spacebar, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like using a tag, except it's built in for the input. So anyway, so that's how it's looking for those two inputs. It's looking for the mouse X and mouse Y as you're moving. Okay, and then we have 2 more floats that we're creating, rotation amount for X and rotation amount for Y. And essentially we're just multiplying it by our mouse sensitivity that we have up at the top. So essentially it allows us, to move around faster. And then a vector 3 rotate player, which essentially is the vector 3 that will tell the program what angle to rotate in. So yeah, player that rotation, Euler angles. Euler angles is what Unity uses as like an angle variable for your rotation. So okay, here we have or changing the amount of your rotation player based on the rotation amount of Y. So we're dealing with kind of 2 different things here. This X and Y, the rotation amount X and Y, is for the mouse. Vector 3 is yes, yeah, it's a basic vector. Yeah, vector 3s are primarily what you use for player positioning, rotation, all of that stuff. So yeah, it's an XYZ coordinate. So yeah, these rotational amounts are with the mouse. This X, Y, and Z is in the Unity coordinate system. So we don't want to rotate anything on the Z axis here. It's a bit confusing, but if you, again, you can mess around with this and see the results, but rotation player.x is the same as a mouse rotation in Y. And then it's the opposite for Y and X, right? And then after that, you set the rotation using this, there's a Euler vector 3. And again, it returns a rotation in Z degrees. It essentially calculates the amount of angle that you need to rotate. So once we have that camera controller, believe we throw that onto our player camera. Right. Yeah, player camera. I'm fairly sure. Threw it on there twice. All right. There's our mouse sensitivity. Probably put that to 3. And then the player that we want. Here's the player. And there you have it. So it moves around, and you can also move. I have it set to the arrow, so it's kind of wonky for me. But yeah, basic FPS movement. You notice that well, I guess the cursor is always gone. Get out of this, all you do is escape, or you can also come back. I guess it was there before, and then you can go ahead and stop it. So is there any questions on that? Yeah, it's inverted in relation to Unity because it is. I'm not sure. You can see in this little widget, the XYZ coordinates are different than what you would think. Like I think most of us know Z as being up and down. Well, the Unity isn't like that. But when you're talking about mouse coordinates, X and Y are different, right? So, okay. So I'm going to talk about scenes for a second. So obviously what we're working in right now is a scene. You can see all of your scenes in the scenes folder, which is automatically generated. And they're right here. It's essentially the world that you're building, right? And you can either build this up with 3D object cubes, right? Like you can make walls, pretty easy to prototype. I feel like you guys, kind of already have basic ideas of how all that works. And I'm sure you know that you can also import objects, right? So I'm going to touch on that just briefly because I'm sure you guys will be using this. So window asset store. So I'm sure most of you have gone to the asset store to see what they have. They have a whole bunch of stuff, 3D, 2D, they have audio, they have templates and stuff. Again, to help you out with prototyping and getting stuff ready, you can use the asset store. I don't want you to go crazy with it. And whatever you use, I want you to credit it. But, it can be pretty good to help you, get things ready. So you can see a lot of them cost money, but we can just see what's on the free side here. So, okay, we have these trees here. I'll just download this real quick. So you can download packages of objects fairly simply. Hit download. Apparently I'm not signed in. Oh, cut it out. Okay, so it downloads it pretty quickly, and then you can go ahead and just import everything from there, and it'll automatically go into your project. And usually it sets it up in a separate folder down here. And they already have prefabs for you, so it has the extra tab up here, and you just go switch back to your scene. So take a tree, just drag it on there. Easy peasy. You can scale them up to as much as you want. You see that it ends up over here. And you got palm tree. Fairly simple. I mean, pretty easy to do all that stuff. I mean, there's tons of things on the asset store that, you know, whatever you need is probably on there. And as you can see, these things aren't very well developed either, but you get what you pay for, I guess. Same thing with, I mean, it doesn't have to be environmental objects, player characters is the same deal. Sometimes they even have animations on things for you to mess around with. So yeah, they have them prepackaged as prefabs, so you don't have to do much work. But if you really wanted to get into them, I mean, they have the textures, the meshes. I mean, you can really mess around. You can make your own textures on these objects and throw it on there. I'm interested to see what their demo scene looks like. Oh, okay, that's really anticlimactic. It just shows the fortress. So pretty useful. Definitely something to look into. No questions about the asset store? And say you had control. Maybe I just have to put a whole bunch. We got a whole bunch of these trees. I like creating an empty game object and dragging them onto that one. And then you can move them all at the same. Yeah, I'm gonna say probably just like in a text document of some sort, and throw it on into your projects folder when you submit it. So, I mean, as long as it's somewhere, or if you have your menu system up and running, just have a credits tab and throw it in the game. That'd probably work better, actually. So, yep, easy way to grab all of them at once. Okay. So I have two scenes here. This one here that I've been working in, and then the scene 01, which is kind of just I think I have to do more work on this. But it's just a plane, pretty much. I made it dark just so that there's a difference. And I want to talk a little about loading a different scene. So the first thing that we have to do is going up to File and then your build settings. When you do that, these scenes won't be there. I've already added them. So whatever scene that you have open, it will first populate in your build settings and said add open scenes, you know, and then it'll populate as 0 here. And then you do the same thing with the next one. You go build settings, add open scenes, and then you'll have your second scene there. Okay. So we want to hit some sort of game object that will allow us to load in the next scene. So essentially going from, outside into a building or something like that. So that's essentially what this cube is. But first I'm going to go into this script called scene switch. And again, fairly simple. Well, it's fairly simple because there's nothing in there. What happened to it? Technical difficulties. Whoa. It's not what I wanted to do. I had the file saved somewhere, but at any rate. So, okay, we have this script, scene switch. You can pretty much just get rid of all of this because we won't need it for this. And what we need to do is create onTrigger enter, which is a built-in function that we're overriding. For whenever whatever has this script enters into an object, right? We also need to add a library in here for Unity Engine scene management. What that does is it allows us to use scene manager. And then we load a scene. All right, and what we put into here is the number that's associated with the scene that we want to load. In our case is 1. Okay, and that scene switch script is already on this cube that essentially I just elongated a giant cube. If it's not an object that's like a physical object, you can always turn off the mesh renderer and it'll be invisible to the player. And with a little luck, well, let me just turn it on so I can actually see it. Yeah, I've been having problems with this. Last time I had it working. But that is the general gist of how it's supposed to be done. You might have a little bit more luck than I do because I think my Unity is just set up in a different way. Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, that's a trigger. Oh, maybe the player needs to be I don't think the player needs to be a trigger, but give it a shot. that is a good point. The object to which you want to load the screen needs to have the trigger checked on. Let me just try removing and adding it again. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't before, but it's not. Yeah. The collider. Yeah, that's correct. And I didn't have it as a trigger before. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's just, I don't know, shot in the dark. But yeah, that's typically how you load from scene to scene. Yeah, maybe the collider needs to be bigger. I'm not sure. But that's the general idea of, you know, just same with the box that we had from the other lecture of collectibles. It's just an on trigger enter event, and then you just load the scene through Scene Manager. Okay. I'm gonna take a 15-minute break. I will be right back. All right, everybody. Sorry for that brief intermission. So, all right, for this next thing, I'm going to remove the camera controller. Right, I can't remember if I removed it or not already. Yeah, I removed it from the player just because I need the cursor for this next thing. So the next thing I'm going to go over is picking up and putting down objects, which could be useful for some of you. So first we're going to need an object to grab. So I'm going to create a 3D object. Just a box. And I'm going to go ahead and just give it one of these. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, it can look funky. It doesn't really matter. Okay. And so right click, create C# script called pickup. I'm going to open that up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove these because we're not going to need way to start for what we're going to do here. So first, I'm going to need a variable int form called test or destination. Essentially, the point where we're going to be moving the box from. And then we're going to create a function that's rebuilt into Unity called Onmousedown. So in here, first we're going to get component Rigidbody dot use gravity false. Essentially, what this will do. Essentially, what this will do is it'll remove the gravity for whatever object that we're picking up. Then just transform position. equal the position that we set. Sorry, my phone's going crazy all of a sudden. It's weird. All right, then we're actually going to parent this object. That is what transform.parent does. And then we're going to find the game object, which we will call destination. We haven't created that object yet, but that's what the name is going to be, is destination. Okay, so this is pretty much it for picking up. Pretty simple. So we're going to do the same, but opposite for topic, and we'll use the onMouse. Essentially, when you release the mouse click button. So this transform parent goes null. We're unparenting the object from our player. And then get components. The Rigidbody use gravity equals true. And essentially that just puts the gravity back on. Okay, go ahead and save this. Get back over here. And we're going to put this script onto our box. Okay. Take a script. The dest should be this new empty game object. So empty game object pretty much doesn't have mesh render or anything like that. It's just like an empty object. All right, and then we're going to rename this destination. We're also, so once you've parented this to the player, it puts it right in the center. We're going to move that forward, and I'm going to have to raise it up a bit just so that we can see it where our camera is. And I believe this needs to go on player. If not player, then it needs to go on destination, but we'll give it a shot. I believe that's everything we need to set up. Let's hit play and see how this goes. Oh, one other thing we need to do. For the box, we need to add a rigid body. That's what it's looking for. Wait a minute. Is that what this was missing? The rigid body? Well, I'm gonna remove this because apparently now, I think that was the issue that we were running into. So it went somewhere. Maybe I have it's too high. Let me change this to destination. Now we have it. I'm pressing down on the mouse button, and then when I release, it drops down. Is there any question about that? Well, your player will still have gravity. So essentially, if I didn't turn off, sure. So Onmousedown is an event that's triggered when you click down on the mouse, right? Yeah. Yeah, essentially once you go up, we're turning the gravity back on. We take the gravity off because what's going to happen is that it's going to go to our destination game object and then fall to the ground. And we don't want that to happen. We want it to stay in that position. And again, it's finding that destination.transform. Any other questions about that? In terms of power-ups, sure. I mean, you could even say, if it's, if it's parented, then, turn gravity off for your player or whatever power-up that you want. You can check to see if that's parented to it or not. Typically, like power-ups is something like you pass through it and then you have it and then it goes away for a certain amount of time. But that's up to you. Okay. So I'm going to go over one more thing tonight because I think we went through a lot of stuff. And that is going to be the terrain tool. Some of you have some exterior game stuff going on, so probably be interesting. So instead of creating like a plane or a cube or something for your ground, you can go to terrain. All right. And it automatically creates this giant square. So much so that it might slow down your computer. Okay. And you'll see over here, your components change, right? So you can create neighboring terrains if you need to add on to this space. But right now we're just going to go paint the paint terrain, raise or lower terrain. So as the name suggests, you can paint right onto the terrain and it'll raise or lower it depending on how you want to use it. You can change the brush size, oh geez, opacity, and also the type of brush that you have. Jeez. Yeah, essentially a sculpting tool. This is, as far as I know, I've researched it a little bit, like how this kind of runs. It's essentially creating an alpha map and then applying that to this plane to save, like just to optimize it. You paint a texture if you have a texture loaded up. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff to play with in here. Another thing is trees. You can add trees if you have them. I don't think I have any trees. Yeah. Add tree. Yeah, I don't have any trees, unfortunately. I think, oh wait. maybe. Yeah, maybe I can use these guys. Okay. Oh. Hey, look, I have a forest of trees. Not only that, you can add more. And I believe you change density, brush size. I want 1. Yeah, that might be too dense for. Yeah, good way to mess around with trees. I think you can increase the randomness of it too. You notice the more things you put on here, like the less it's starting to render, because it takes a whole bunch of power to place all these things and to render it out. God, I don't even want to know what that is. There's a lot of interesting features in here to mess around with for terrain. Control, shift control. Can't remember how to reduce the mountain. That's not what I want to do. You can add your own brushes in here if you want, like, type of texture. Details. There's a whole bunch to mess around with here. Again, I mean, just kind of be cautious about, you know, how much you do, because I mean, optimization is a thing. Yeah, you can see at the bottom, baking. It'll bake as you go, and it takes a while, and it'll slow everything down. So. And if you don't like any of it, poop, it's all gone. Okay, well, I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm gonna stop here and let you guys, you know, get to developing and stuff. I'll be here for questions. So that's all for the lecture this week. I think next week we'll we'll get into some 2D stuff like platforming and all that. And then maybe after, well, I think the week after that is when you guys will be doing your check-in here. But I'll probably go over raycasting, because that can be pretty useful. So, alrighty. That's it for this evening. Hope you guys have a good night. Again, I'm sticking around, so let me know if you have any questions when we go over things.
Okay, so I did like recently check my school email and I noticed that you emailed me and I just want to say thank you. Um, for the the issues with the class
Hmm.
that you thought I had, pretty much you addressed it. It's just um having a continuity of like recorded video of the class one, and then the if you don't do it, it's fine, but the only further suggestion that I would have, and maybe it's too much to ask for, but would be to just upload the naked code as well as the video.
You know, yeah, I actually didn't mean to do that. I'll do that tonight with this file and the one from last week. I'll have those posted up.
Cool. And then the second thing I wanted to ask, it's like I don't need to go through it, but I was hoping maybe you could give me some keywords. I wanted to make like a custom effect, and I don't know if I should do it in Unity or how it's gonna work. Um, but one of my characters, he's gonna have like the cartoon outline.
Hmm.
Um, but everything within the outline, um, I want to use like a 2D projector from the camera angle. So so like I'm thinking like a way to keep the character and kind of like in an anonymous way is to use like a photo within the frame of the outline. And so the camera angle might change or bump depending on his movement. Um, so like I'm trying to make an effect where the outline of the character is more or less like a frame. So he might move in 3D, like his arms would cross, his legs might cross each other,
Hmm.
but the outline stays the same and the interior is like a 2D photo.
Um, so for the outline, the best thing to probably use is a cell shader.
Okay.
Yeah, just look up shaders, and there's that effect is called cell shading. So that'll give you your black outline around your character.
Okay.
As for the second part, I'm not quite sure what the effect is. You want to put a 2D image in front of your player?
Well, just all right. So you have the animation where like the arms might cross the torso as
Uh,
as the walk is going on, or
Sorry,
the
one
leg.
second, Jose. Yeah, I got you guys for attendance, so you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So the arms might cross the torso and the legs might cross each other, but the outline pretty much cancels that. But what feeds back generally is the 3D form of the object. And so what I want to do is kind of nullify the 3D form and just have like an interior, like the interior. Specifically, I'm hoping to just use a NASA photo asset of space so that it just looks like the character is literally made out of outer space.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So, yeah, you probably just like use a 2D image that's kind of alphaed out. So you have, I believe it's called an alpha map, where you'll have whatever your outline will be in black, and then everything else is transparent. And then I guess behind it would be whatever your image will be, right? It would be like the space, or do you want? I assume you want this to move, like the.
Um, well, the 2D image doesn't have to move. It could be like essentially like a a plane behind the
Mhm.
character that the outline of the character reveals so that it looks like you just notice the outline. The space doesn't have to move itself.
I see. Yeah. So basically, like as the player is moving, you have the space plane behind the outline, and then it gives the effect of the space moving as the player is moving, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Pretty much like the
Okay.
outline, like as if it was a lens, as if the player was a lens.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the best way to do that would, yeah, have your outline probably like as some sort of alpha, or you could probably just do like I would assume like a PNG or something, if you didn't worry about like animations. But um, yeah, then you'd have that anchored to your player object, and then you'd have the background behind it, and it should give that effect of motion.
and is that something that I do in Unity, or do I do most of that before I import?
Yeah, you can do it in Unity. It probably make more sense to do it in Unity, because if you did it outside of it, then I guess you'd have to kind of have like a looping animation or something like that. But yeah, you can probably just do that in Unity as like two separate planes.
Okay, so what I want to do, my keywords are alpha map.
Hmm.
Anything else that might help me?
You can look up cell shading. That might help. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, and I would just mess around with planes within your 3D objects, and then throw the like space material on there, and see what kind of effects you get. Because then you could have whatever 3D character that you have kind of turn off the mesh renderer, keep the cell shading on, and then you'll have your space background coming through, I believe. That makes sense.
Say that again. Turn off the mesh render and then.
Yeah, you should be able to turn off the mesh renderer for your character.
Uh-huh.
And then once you add a shader to that player object,
Mm-hmm.
it'll have the cell shading on it. It should retain the outline, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Again, I'd have to test it. And then you have your background, which is your space behind it. So then as the player is moving, your animations will change the cell shading. Like it'll kind of change like the arms moving and stuff, so you look like you're running or moving around. And
Mm-hmm.
then the background will move with the character.
How do I hide the plane that's not within the outline?
Yeah, I'd have to think about that. That might be a raycasting situation. I don't know. I'd have to do some research. I can get back to you with that, but it's
Okay.
probably a good place to start, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. I appreciate it. And
Yep, no
like, yeah,
problem.
everything else. Cool.
I'm glad to hear it. Thanks.